What if the person you just bumped into, the one you can't stop thinking about, isn't an accident at all? What if God himself is weaving something into your story that you can't yet see? Think about it. So many times we call things coincidence. But what if those little moments, those unexpected connections, those sudden feelings of peace around someone, are actually divine setups? Imagine realizing that the person standing right in front of you might be the very one God has been preparing for you all along. Sounds almost unbelievable, right? But here's the truth. God often works quietly, behind the scenes, arranging details in ways that don't make sense until you step back and see the bigger picture. And when he's setting you up with someone special, the signs are there. You just have to know how to recognize them. Every human heart carries a longing that refuses to be silenced, the need for connection. It's something that no amount of success, money, or achievements can fully satisfy. Deep down, we crave someone to share life with, someone who sees us, knows us, and still chooses us. This desire is not a flaw or weakness. It is designed into us by God himself. From the very beginning of creation, God looked at Adam, placed him in a beautiful garden, surrounded him with animals and purpose, and yet said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Adam had everything: work, beauty, even direct relationship with God, but still lacked something. That's when God gave him Eve, showing us that companionship is part of his perfect design. If you've ever felt the sting of loneliness, you know how heavy it can be. You can be in a crowded room, scrolling through endless feeds, or even achieving your goals, and still feel that emptiness. That ache isn't random. It's a signal pointing toward the truth that we were made for relationship. And in the same way you hunger for food or thirst for water, your spirit hungers for a bond that reflects God's own love. But here's what often gets overlooked. God doesn't just throw people into our lives by chance. He is intentional. If he knows the number of hairs on your head, if he keeps track of every tear you've cried, don't you think he also cares about who walks alongside you in life? The relationships you enter into aren't trivial. They have the power to shape your destiny, influence your faith, and either build you up or pull you down. That's why, when God is setting you up with someone special, he begins by stirring this desire for connection in your heart, not to frustrate you, but to prepare you. Because before the right person shows up, God often awakens in you the realization that you were never meant to walk this road alone. One of the clearest signs that God is at work in your relationships is how his timing plays out compared to your own. We live in a culture that moves fast and expects results instantly. If you're hungry, you order food and it arrives in minutes. If you want entertainment, you click and it streams right away. That mindset often spills into how we approach love. We think it should happen quickly, and when it doesn't, we panic. But God operates on a different clock. His timing is never rushed, and it's never late. It's always exact, even when it feels painfully slow to us. Many people force relationships simply because they're tired of waiting. They mistake loneliness for readiness. They think, if I don't act now, I'll miss my chance. But what they don't realize is that rushing ahead often leads to heartbreak. It's like eating fruit before it's ripe. You get something bitter that should have been sweet. On the other hand, when you wait for God's timing, the connection has a peace and stability that rushing can't give you. Think about Abraham and Sarah. They knew God promised them a child, but when it didn't happen quickly, they tried to speed things up by taking matters into their own hands. The result was Ishmael, a complicated situation that caused strife and pain. Later, when they finally trusted God's timing, Isaac was born, the fulfillment of God's original plan. That story shows us the danger of impatience and the beauty of waiting. When God is setting you up with someone special, He often slows things down. He may close doors that you thought were perfect. He may put you through seasons of growth and preparation. That delay isn't punishment, it's protection. He's making sure that both you and the other person are ready for what's ahead. If you're in a season of waiting right now, it may be the very evidence that God is at work. His silence isn't absence. His delay isn't denial. It's the groundwork for something greater, something you couldn't handle if it came too soon. And when the right person finally arrives, you'll see why His timing was worth trusting all along. Sometimes the way God introduces someone into your life feels so ordinary that you almost miss how extraordinary it truly is. You might call it coincidence, but heaven calls it divine appointment. Think about the moments where you just happen to be in the right place at the right time, crossing paths with someone you never expected to meet. These encounters may look random on the surface, but they are often the threads of God's bigger design being woven quietly behind the scenes. Look at the story of Ruth and Boaz. Ruth wasn't planning a romance. She was simply trying to survive after the loss of her husband. She went out to gather leftover grain in a field, and by God's providence, it was Boaz's field she entered. That single, seemingly small decision changed her entire destiny. What looked like chance was God arranging a setup that would eventually place Ruth in the lineage of Jesus Himself. Or take Abraham's servant who prayed for a sign at the well when searching for a wife for Isaac. He asked God for specific confirmation, and immediately Rebekah appeared, fulfilling the prayer with precision. What appeared as luck was God's orchestration from start to finish. In modern life, these divine encounters still happen. It might be a conversation with a stranger on a train, an introduction through a mutual friend, or even a person you've known for years, suddenly entering your life in a deeper way. Many people dismiss these as mere chance, but when you look back, you'll often realize the timing was too perfect to be random. God has a way of moving people, opening doors, and crossing paths in ways no one could have planned. When God is setting you up with someone special, the meeting itself often carries a strange weight, as if it matters more than you understand in the moment. You might not even realize it at first. Only later, when you reflect on how everything aligned, the timing, the setting, the way your paths crossed, you see His fingerprints all over it. That's why it's so important not to brush off those random meetings. They may very well be the beginning of a story God Himself is writing. One of the strongest indicators that God is aligning you with someone special is the presence of shared values and faith. Attraction might spark interest, but it's shared convictions that sustain a relationship. God does not pair His children with someone who will pull them away from Him. If the person you're drawn to consistently encourages you to compromise your beliefs, dismiss your faith, or live in a way that dishonors God, that is not His setup. It's a distraction. When God is at work, the connection is rooted in a mutual love for Him. This doesn't mean the other person has to be perfect or have their entire spiritual life figured out, but it does mean you can clearly see Christ at the center of their choices and actions. You'll notice the way they speak, the way they handle challenges, and the way they treat others reveals a heart aligned with God. Conversations about faith feel natural, not forced. Praying together doesn't feel awkward, but life-giving. Instead of dragging you down or mocking your devotion, they honor it and often strengthen it. Think about 2 Corinthians 6:14, where Paul warns against being unequally yoked. He compares it to two animals tied together, but pulling in opposite directions. It doesn't work. It leads to exhaustion and brokenness. When God orchestrates a relationship, He ensures that you are moving in the same direction spiritually. The values line up, the faith lines up, and the vision for the future doesn't clash, but harmonizes. In practical terms, this might look like both of you desiring to serve, both caring deeply about integrity, both prioritizing family, or both pursuing holiness over temporary pleasure. It may not mean you agree on every little thing, but the core of who you are aligns. That kind of alignment isn't something you stumble into by chance. It's a reflection of God's hand at work. So when you find yourself with someone who not only respects your walk with God, but joins you in it, pay attention. That's not ordinary. That's a quiet sign that God may be setting you up with someone who is meant to walk beside you in faith, not pull you away from it. There's a peace that comes from God, which no human reasoning can explain. And when He is setting you up with someone special, that peace becomes a marker you cannot ignore. It's not the same as butterflies or nervous excitement. Those feelings can come and go, fueled by attraction or uncertainty. The peace of God is steady, unshaken, even when circumstances are confusing. It is the inner assurance that what you are stepping into is safe, good, and guided by Him. Think about the difference between confusion and clarity. When a relationship is not from God, it often leaves you second-guessing everything. One day you feel secure. The next you're drowning in doubt. You replay conversations in your head, wondering what's real and what's manipulation. Your spirit feels restless. But when God is in the middle of it, even if there are questions about the future, there is a calm in your soul. You don't have to strive or force things to work. There's no need to cling out of fear of losing them, because the bond is anchored in something deeper than your own efforts. Jesus promised in John 14:27, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives, do I give to you." That peace is one of the clearest signs that you're moving in step with God's will. It doesn't mean challenges won't arise. It doesn't mean doubts will never whisper in your ear. But it does mean that underneath all of it, there's a sense of rest. You can lay your head down at night and feel confident, not because you have everything figured out, but because you know God does. So if you're wondering whether God is setting you up with someone, pay close attention to what your spirit feels when you're with them. Do you feel anxious, pressured, or constantly unsettled? Or do you feel a quiet assurance that you're safe, valued, and seen? That inner peace is not something you can manufacture. It is one of God's ways of confirming, "This is from me." Another sign that God is setting you up with someone special is that challenges don't destroy the connection. They refine it. Many people assume that if God is in a relationship, everything will be smooth, easy, and free of conflict. But in reality, even divinely orchestrated relationships face obstacles. The difference is in how those obstacles are handled. When God is at work, challenges don't push you apart permanently. They draw you closer and reveal the strength of what He is building. Consider Joseph and Mary. Before they were even married, their relationship was tested in ways that could have easily torn them apart. Mary was found to be with child, something that in their culture could have ruined her reputation, and Joseph's as well. Joseph wrestled with what to do, but God intervened, sending an angel to confirm that this was His plan. Instead of running away, Joseph stood by her, proving his faithfulness. That early trial became the foundation of trust and resilience that carried them through even greater challenges as they raised the Son of God. The truth is, God allows trials to reveal the depth of our commitment. Fire refines gold, and pressure shapes diamonds. In the same way, challenges in a relationship can show whether the connection is shallow or built on something eternal. If every disagreement leads to bitterness, if every difficulty turns into abandonment, that's not the kind of setup God ordains. But if trials lead to growth, forgiveness, and stronger unity, that is a sign of His hand at work. You might notice that the person God brings into your life doesn't run when things get tough. Instead, they pray with you. They seek solutions instead of blame. They stand beside you when walking away would be easier. This doesn't mean the relationship is perfect. It means it has resilience. That resilience is often the very thing God uses to prepare you both for the future. Because love that has been tested is love that can be trusted. And when God is setting you up with someone special, He will allow the challenges not to destroy you, but to prove that what He has joined together has the strength to endure. Another way God confirms that He is setting you up with someone special is through the voices of wise counsel around you. Scripture makes it clear that God often speaks through other people. Proverbs 11:14 says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety." When God is in the middle of bringing two lives together, He doesn't leave the confirmation only to your emotions. He often allows the people you trust, mentors, spiritual leaders, and godly friends, to see and affirm what He is doing. When a relationship is not from God, you will often notice that the people who love you most hesitate to support it. They might see red flags. You're too blinded by feelings to notice. Sometimes their warnings feel uncomfortable, even frustrating. But God uses them to protect you from stepping into something harmful. On the other hand, when God is behind a connection, wise voices tend to echo the same encouragement. They may say things like, "I see how this person brings out the best in you," or, "The peace you feel is visible to us too." Their counsel aligns with the peace you already sense in your spirit. Think of Samuel anointing David as king. David didn't crown himself. God confirmed his choice through a prophet. In the same way, you don't have to rely only on your own judgment about a relationship. God often sends confirmation through trusted people who can see what you might miss. Of course, not every opinion matters. Random people on the internet, acquaintances at work, or those who don't share your faith may not have the wisdom to discern God's hand. The voices that count are the ones who walk closely with Him and care about your well-being. They pray for you. They know your strengths and weaknesses, and they desire to see you flourish in God's will. So if you notice that godly people in your life are consistently affirming a relationship, pay attention. That agreement is not accidental. It may very well be God's way of saying, "Yes, this is from me." And if the people you trust are raising red flags, don't brush it off. Their caution might be God's mercy in disguise, keeping you from pain that you can't yet see. One of the clearest ways to discern whether God is setting you up with someone special is to pay attention to the difference between red flags and green lights. God is not the author of confusion or manipulation. If someone consistently makes you feel small, unsafe, or distant from God, that is not His setup. It's a trap. Too often people ignore the warning signs because they're infatuated or afraid of being alone. But those red flags are God's way of protecting your heart. Red flags can look like dishonesty, where words don't match actions. They can appear as constant disrespect, where your boundaries are ignored and your values mocked. They can be hidden in manipulation, where you feel guilty for saying no, or in selfishness, where everything revolves around their needs and never yours. Abuse, whether emotional, verbal, or physical, is never something God calls you to endure. Love that comes from Him is patient, kind, and rooted in truth. If a relationship drains your spirit and leaves you more broken than whole, that is a sign to step away, not press forward. But when God is at work, the opposite happens. Instead of red flags, you see green lights, consistent signs of health and stability. The person is honest, even when it's uncomfortable. They show respect, not only to you but to others, because it flows from their character. Their presence brings encouragement, not pressure. They build you up instead of tearing you down. They don't just say they care, they prove it with steady, dependable actions. Jesus said you would know a tree by its fruit. The same applies to relationships. A godly connection produces good fruit: joy, peace, patience, faithfulness, kindness. If the relationship bears rotten fruit, jealousy, control, fear, it's a warning. If it bears fruit that aligns with the Spirit of God, it's a sign you're on the right path. So when you're discerning whether this person is someone God is setting you up with, ask yourself, do I see red flags that I'm trying to excuse? Or do I see green lights that keep confirming His hand? God's will does not come wrapped in confusion or toxicity. It comes marked with truth, consistency, and love that mirrors His own. Another hidden sign that God is setting you up with someone special is how much the relationship challenges you to grow in character. Real love isn't just about comfort, it's about sharpening each other, much like Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." When God is behind a connection, you won't stay the same. You'll notice that being around this person stirs something in you, a desire to become more patient, more humble, more faithful, more like Christ. This growth doesn't come through flattery or empty words. It comes through the way they encourage you when you're struggling, the way they hold you accountable when you drift, and the way their own example inspires you to rise higher. Maybe you see how they pray with consistency, and it pushes you to strengthen your own prayer life. Maybe their generosity stirs you to let go of selfishness. Or maybe their perseverance in trials teaches you how to stand firm instead of giving up. On the flip side, a relationship that doesn't come from God often stunts growth. Instead of pulling you upward, it pulls you down. You find yourself compromising your standards, silencing your convictions, or excusing behavior that doesn't align with your values. That's not sharpening, that's dulling. And over time, it leaves you weaker, not stronger. When God brings the right person into your life, He uses them as a tool for your transformation. Think of Peter, James, and John walking closely with Jesus. They didn't just learn from His words. Their very character was reshaped by being in His presence. In a similar way, when God sets you up with someone special, you'll notice that your flaws are gently confronted, your faith is strengthened, and your capacity to love grows deeper. This doesn't mean the relationship is free from tension. Iron sharpening iron involves friction, and sometimes that process is uncomfortable, but the result is refinement. You don't walk away from time with them feeling drained. You walk away stretched, challenged, and built up. That kind of growth is a powerful confirmation that God's hand is guiding the connection. Because His purpose for relationships isn't just happiness, it's holiness. And the person He chooses for you will always push you closer to the person He created you to be. Impatience is one of the biggest pitfalls when it comes to relationships, and it's also one of the clearest ways we can miss God's setup. Many people confuse urgency with destiny. They think because they feel strong attraction or don't want to be alone any longer, it must mean this person is the one. But when emotions take the driver's seat, wisdom gets left behind. And rushing what God is still preparing often leads to heartbreak. Think about the story of Saul in the Old Testament. God told him to wait for Samuel to arrive before offering a sacrifice, but Saul grew impatient. He decided to take matters into his own hands, and that single act of impatience cost him his kingdom. The lesson is sobering. Impatience can destroy blessings that were meant for us. In relationships, the same principle applies. When you push ahead without God's timing, you risk settling for something that looks good on the surface, but doesn't have the depth to last. Impatience often shows up in subtle ways. It's the pressure to define a relationship before it's had time to grow roots. It's ignoring red flags because you're afraid this is your last chance. It's convincing yourself that a temporary thrill is worth lifelong compromise. These choices can leave scars that take years to heal. God doesn't want you to carry that pain. That's why He calls you to wait, even when waiting feels like torture. On the other hand, patience creates space for God to reveal what's real. When you wait, you allow Him to expose hidden motives, reveal true character, and align circumstances in ways you couldn't orchestrate yourself. The waiting season is not wasted. It's the testing ground where God refines you and prepares the other person for you. So if you find yourself tempted to rush, remember this: God's best is never delivered in a hurry. A love that comes from Him will stand the test of time. If it's truly from God, waiting won't ruin it. It will only make it stronger. And the very act of waiting may be the proof that you trust Him more than your emotions. Another subtle but powerful way God sets people up is by letting the foundation of friendship form before romance. In a world that constantly glorifies instant attraction and whirlwind relationships, we often forget that the strongest love stories are built on trust, respect, and companionship that grows slowly. Friendship is the soil where love can take root and flourish, and God knows that without it, the relationship won't have the depth to endure. Think about how meaningful it is when you can laugh with someone, share everyday experiences, and talk about your dreams without pressure. In friendship, masks come off. You're not trying to impress, you're simply being yourself. That's where authenticity shines, and that's often where God begins His setups. Some of the most beautiful marriages start with two people who first learned to enjoy each other's company as friends, who discovered each other's strengths and weaknesses without the weight of unrealistic expectations. Even in Scripture, we see the importance of deep bonds formed through trust and loyalty. While not romantic, the friendship of David and Jonathan shows us what true companionship looks like. Their connection was rooted in faithfulness, sacrifice, and loyalty, and it endured through trials and danger. That kind of foundation is exactly what God desires to place under a romantic relationship as well, a bond that is about more than attraction, one that is anchored in loyalty and mutual respect. When God is setting you up with someone special, you may notice that things don't rush straight into passion. Instead, you find yourself building a steady friendship. You talk, you laugh, you support each other, and over time, something deeper begins to grow. That's not a delay or a disappointment. It's God making sure the roots are strong enough to support the weight of love. Because attraction may spark a fire, but friendship builds a flame that won't burn out. So if you notice that the person in your life is first becoming a true friend, don't dismiss it. That friendship may be the very groundwork God is laying for something greater, something that isn't just exciting for a season, but enduring for a lifetime. One of the most important ways to discern whether God is setting you up with someone special is to test the alignment of your spirits. Attraction, personality, and shared interests can all feel exciting. But none of those things are enough to sustain a relationship if the spiritual foundation isn't solid. God will never connect you with someone who consistently pulls you away from Him. Instead, the person He places in your life will naturally encourage your walk with Christ and point you back to Him. This test of alignment isn't about whether the person can quote scripture or attend church services. It goes deeper than appearances. It's about asking, does this person help me grow closer to God or distract me from Him? Do I feel inspired to live in a way that honors Christ when I'm with them, or do I feel tempted to compromise what I know is right? These are questions that bring clarity when emotions might cloud your judgment. The Bible tells us in Matthew 7:16 that we will know people by their fruits. That means their actions, priorities, and character reveal what truly matters to them. If the fruits of their life line up with the Spirit, things like love, joy, peace, kindness, and self-control, then you can be confident that their walk with God is genuine. But if the fruits show constant anger, dishonesty, selfishness, or disregard for holiness, then no matter how much chemistry there is, that relationship is not aligned with God's will. Practical ways to test this alignment include prayer, fasting, and seeking wisdom in the Word. When you pray about the relationship, do you feel peace or confusion? When you step back and examine it under the lens of Scripture, does it reflect God's standards for love, sacrifice, and purity? When you fast and silence distractions, does your spirit lean toward confirmation or warning? These spiritual practices help cut through the noise of feelings and give space for God's voice to speak clearly. If the connection is from Him, you won't have to twist Scripture to justify it or ignore His whispers to your conscience. Instead, you'll find that His Word, His Spirit, and the wise counsel in your life all align in confirmation. That kind of unity isn't man-made. It's evidence that the setup is divine. There comes a moment when everything begins to align, and it feels almost surreal. It's not just that you've met someone kind, or that the timing finally worked out. It's the unmistakable sense that God's fingerprints are on every part of the connection. This is the climax of the story, the moment when all the pieces you couldn't make sense of before suddenly come together in a way that leaves you in awe. It often happens after seasons of waiting, after times when you wondered if God had forgotten your prayers. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the right person arrives. But you realize that the timing is not just convenient, it's perfect. The very delays that frustrated you before become clear as preparation. If the connection had come earlier, one or both of you would not have been ready. Now, the maturity, the growth, and the healing you've experienced line up with what they've walked through, and together it feels like puzzle pieces snapping into place. The values align effortlessly. The peace you feel is not fleeting but deep and consistent. Conversations that might have felt awkward with others flow naturally, like you've known each other longer than you have. The counsel of wise voices confirms what your spirit already sensed. Even the challenges you've faced together haven't pulled you apart. They've revealed a resilience that strengthens your bond. It becomes clear that this isn't just another relationship. It's one marked by divine orchestration. Think of Ruth and Boaz again. For Ruth, gleaning in the field may have felt like an act of desperation. For Boaz, showing kindness to a foreign widow may have felt like a small gesture. But when all the threads of their story wove together, it became obvious that God had been scripting it all along. Their union wasn't just about love. It carried generational purpose, leading directly to the line of David and ultimately to Christ. In the same way, when God sets you up with someone, the relationship has a weight beyond your own happiness. It serves a purpose greater than you. You begin to see how your gifts complement each other, how your visions align, how your presence in each other's lives creates an impact that ripples outward. It's not just about two people falling in love. It's about God using the union to bless others, to model His love, and to fulfill part of His plan on earth. And in that realization, something shifts inside you. The doubts that used to plague your mind fall quiet. The fears that kept you hesitant lose their grip. What's left is gratitude, deep, overflowing gratitude that the God who holds the stars in place also cared enough to arrange the details of your story, right down to the person standing beside you. That awareness is the key moment, the confirmation that this isn't random, this isn't forced, this isn't temporary. This is God's setup, and it was worth every second of the wait. It's easy to think that when God is setting you up with someone special, it always has to mean romance. But the truth is, his setups are often bigger than just marriage or dating. Sometimes the special someone he places in your path is a partner in ministry, a trusted friend, or even a mentor who shifts the direction of your entire life. God's definition of connection goes far beyond romantic love. He designs relationships with eternal purpose. Think about Moses and Aaron. God sent Aaron not as a spouse, but as a helper and a voice to support Moses in his calling. Their partnership was divinely arranged to carry out God's mission of leading Israel. Or look at Paul and Timothy, a mentor-mentee relationship that strengthened the early church. Even Jesus surrounded himself with disciples, and within that circle, there were deeper connections like Peter, James, and John. These were not romantic bonds, but they were life-changing setups that shaped history. This matters because sometimes people miss God's gift by assuming it has to look like a love story. They overlook friendships, partnerships, or divine appointments simply because they're waiting only for romance. But God may be preparing you with someone whose role in your life is to sharpen your faith, walk with you through battles, or launch you into your calling. That person might not be your spouse, but they are no less special in God's plan. When God arranges these connections, the signs are often the same: shared values, peace, alignment, growth, and confirmation through wise counsel. The difference is in the purpose. Instead of leading to a wedding, it may lead to a mission, a ministry, or a lifelong friendship that anchors you through every season. And here's the beauty of it. Whether God is setting you up with a spouse or a friend, his setups always carry weight beyond your own happiness. They ripple outward, influencing others, building his kingdom, and displaying his love in tangible ways. The person he brings into your life isn't there by accident. They are part of the bigger story he's writing. So while it's natural to hope for romance, don't limit your vision. Be open to the fact that the special someone he's preparing you for may not be a husband or wife, but they will still be instrumental in your journey. Because in the end, God's setups are never small. They are always part of something greater than you imagined, and the people he weaves into your story carry significance that will echo far beyond your lifetime. When you step back and look at all these signs together, the picture becomes clearer. God doesn't leave something as important as relationships to pure chance. He works with intention, weaving together timing, values, peace, counsel, growth, and purpose into a story that only he could design. The longing you've felt for companionship is not random. It's part of his plan. The delays that tested your patience were not wasted. They were preparation. The coincidences that brought certain people into your life were not accidents. They were divine appointments. If you've recognized some of these signs in your own life, take heart. It may be that God is already setting you up with someone special, whether that's a spouse, a friend, or a partner in purpose. And if you haven't yet, don't lose hope. What God is preparing for you is worth the wait, and the peace he gives will confirm it when the time comes. Remember, his setups are not just about filling a void in your heart. They are about fulfilling his purpose in your life. The truth is, God's plan for you is far greater than what you could ever script for yourself. The person he brings will not only bring joy, but will help you walk more closely with him. They will sharpen your faith, stand with you in trials, and magnify His love in your story. And when that moment comes, when you look at them and know deep in your soul that this is God's doing, you'll understand why every delay, every disappointment, and every season of waiting was worth it. So as you move forward, keep your eyes open. Pay attention to the hidden signs. Trust His timing. Don't ignore wise voices, and don't overlook the peace that settles in your spirit when He is at work. The setup may already be happening behind the scenes, and when the curtain finally lifts, you'll see that the author of your story never forgot about you. If you want to know more about how to recognize God's hand in your everyday life, watch the next video popping up on your screen right now.